Welcome back to Football Daily, where today we've constructed a team of players who were forced to leave their country and later became footballing icons. Let's go. Goalkeeper, Steve Mandanda. Kicking off our 11, Steve Mandanda has enjoyed a highly esteemed career in French football, coming through Lars' famous academy system before transferring to Marseille in 2008, winning the Ligue 1 title 2 years later. He has remained the number one at the Stade Velodrome ever since, with the exception of a one-year excursion to Crystal Palace in 2016, but his journey to the top wasn't simple by any means. When he was just 2 years old, Mandanda's family fled the Democratic Republic of Congo, then known as Zaire, and ruled by brutal dictator Mobutu Sese Seko, who, among other things, organised his political opponents to be hanged in public. He and his mother fled the country and joined his father in Normandy, and he grew up in the same town as fellow future Ligue 1 stars Mathieu Bodmer and Bernard Mendy. Despite initially taking a bigger interest in boxing, Mandanda eventually focused on football, but the gloves stayed firmly on. 32 caps, a World Cup and a record 5 Ligue 1 Goalkeeper of the Year awards later, and it's fair to say he made the right decision. Defender, Victor Moses. Despite being highly rated as a youngster, Victor Moses had to persevere before hitting his best form in the Premier League, taking multiple unsuccessful loan spells away from Chelsea before blossoming under Antonio Conte and helping the Blues win an impressive 5th Premier League crown at the age of 27. But the Nigerian international overcame far bigger hurdles before becoming a professional player. Born in Lagos, Moses learned his craft playing street football, but tragically lost both his parents when he was just 11 years old after they were killed in religious riots. A week later, family members raised enough money for him to escape to the UK, and he arrived in London as an asylum seeker. But despite having to settle in at such a young age and with very little English, Moses' footballing ability soon got him noticed, getting picked up by the Crystal Palace Academy and earning a scholarship to the prestigious Whitgift School, where his performances in school tournaments grabbed the attention of the national press. By the age of 16, just 5 years after he'd had to flee Nigeria, Moses made his debut for Palace in the Championship. A truly remarkable journey. Defender, Dejan Lovren. Born in what is now Bosnia and Herzegovina, Dejan Lovren had to flee the country when he was just 3 after the outbreak of the Yugoslav wars. His family left behind their house and shop to drive to Munich, where they lived with his grandfather in a house of 11 people. A situation Lovren has since said he was very lucky to be in, considering the horrors facing people who had to stay in his home country. It was here that Lovren's love of football was ignited. His father coached a team which he then joined, and he would also go and watch Bayern Munich training sessions, idolising stars like Vicente Lizarazu and Lothar Matthäus. After the war ended, he and his family returned to the Balkans, this time settling in Croatia. Like Moses, Lovren had to overcome cultural differences and a language barrier to try and fit in, but his footballing excellence earned him respect in the playground, and he was snapped up by Dinamo Zagreb in 2004. He made his senior debut before his 17th birthday, and by the time he was 21 had already secured his first international move, as he was bought by Lyon for €8 million in January 2010. Transfers to Southampton and then Liverpool eventually followed, and in 2018 he helped Croatia to an unlikely World Cup final before lifting the Champions League the following summer. Defender, Hakim Alavi. Unlike others in this team, Hakim Alavi is far from a football superstar, but his frightening and ultimately inspiring story forced the sporting world to take notice in 2019. A member of the Bahrain national team, Alavi suffered as part of a government crackdown on athletes taking part in pro-democracy demonstrations during the Arab Spring at the beginning of the 2010s. In 2012, he was arrested on his 19th birthday and imprisoned for 3 months, after being accused of vandalising a police station, even though he was playing in a televised match on the other side of the city just 40 minutes before the incident. According to Alavi, he was tortured during this time, with his abusers focusing on his legs and threatening to end his career in the sport. After being released on bail, the youngster was called for a trial, but fearing for his life, he fled the country, ending up in Australia 4 months later, where he was granted refugee status and played for a number of clubs in the 2nd and 3rd tier. But the Bahrain authorities remained on his case, and in late 2018 he was arrested after arriving in Thailand for his honeymoon. Although his refugee status was meant to protect him from such treatment, he was locked up in a Bangkok prison, and while FIFA faced criticism for not acting fast enough on the issue, former Australian international Craig Foster led a successful campaign to have him freed. After 76 days, Alavi was released, and his story remains important not just in football, but for international human rights as a whole. Defender Alphonso Davies. Now one of the most exciting young players in world football, Alfonso Davies is a shining example of how good education and social initiatives can take a player from the bottom to the very top. Born in a refugee camp in Ghana after his parents fled the war in Liberia, Davies grew up in an environment where, according to his father, carrying a gun was part of many people's survival. When he was 5, he and his family were able to move to Canada, and while his parents worked hard to make ends meet, Davies excelled in sports at school, eventually getting recommended by his grade 6 teacher for a local football programme aimed at children from low-income families. Tim Adams, the founder of the Free Footy School, recognised his star quality almost instantly, and within 3 years the youngster had made such a name for himself that he was enrolled in the Vancouver Whitecaps Academy at the age of 14. Amazingly, he made his debut for the senior side at just 15, becoming the first player born in the 21st century to play in the MLS, and Bayern Munich eventually secured his signature 2 summers later. Arriving in Germany having just turned 18, Davies came in off an excellent final season with Vancouver in which he scored 8 and assisted 9 in the league, and he has quickly taken to life at the Allianz Arena, skinning defenders and creating chances at will in the Bundesliga and Europe. Midfielder Luka Modric. The second Croatian in our team, Luka Modric was displaced during the Balkan Wars of the 1990s, like teammate Dejan Lovren, but never actually left his country. Modric and his family escaped from his hometown after his grandfather, who he was named after, was brutally killed by rebels during the Croatian War of Independence. They took refuge in a hotel in the city of Zadar, staying there for the duration of the war, and a young Luka escaped the conflict in his own way, playing football in the car park, where he was noticed by coaches of the local football club. After the war ended, he became even more serious in his sporting endeavours, trialling with Hajduk Split, the club he supported as a child, but was rejected for being too small, eventually signing with rivals Dinamo Zagreb aged 16. A little more than 10 years later, and Modric had evolved into one of the world's most complete midfielders, securing a move to Real Madrid, which would eventually see him become the metronome of the side, which hoovered up 4 Champions League titles in 5 years. And in 2018, he would reach the pinnacle of the sport, leading his country through a historic World Cup campaign before winning the Ballon d'Or. Midfielder Fabrice Muamba. Fabrice Muamba is most well known for surviving a cardiac arrest on the field while playing for Bolton in 2012, an ordeal which tragically brought his football career to an end at the age of 24. But the midfielder's entry into English football was far from simple. Like our goalkeeper Mandanda, Muamba was born in Zaire during the rule of the aforementioned Mobutu, and his father fled the country as a political refugee during the 1990s. After 3 years, he and his mother joined him in England, and they settled in Walthamstow in northeast London, just 6 stops on the Underground from Highbury. Less than 3 years after arriving in the UK, Muamba joined Arsenal's youth system, and he made his debut for the Gunners in the League Cup at 17. Muamba would go on to make 167 appearances in the Premier League before his career was cut short, and he has since gone into coaching, taking training sessions with Liverpool's academy in 2015 and with Rochdale's under-16s in 2018. Midfielder Xherdan Shaqiri. Born in Kosovo, Xherdan Shaqiri moved with his family to Switzerland when he was 4 years old, shortly before war broke out in his home country. 6 years later, he joined Basel's youth team, and it marked the start of a glittering football career which would take him to Bayern Munich, Inter Milan, Stoke City and eventually Liverpool. But Shaqiri has never lost touch with his roots. When Kosovo were granted FIFA membership in 2016, he even considered changing his allegiance, but was unable to due to his involvement with the Swiss national side at that summer's Euros. And when he played against Albania 4 years earlier, he wore the flags of his country, Albania and Switzerland on his boots. He has always maintained that such statements are not meant to be political and are purely a representation of his life story. But he and teammate Granit Xhaka got in hot water at the 2018 World Cup after they made the eagle symbol a central motif of Kosovan and Albanian identity in Switzerland's 2-1 win over Serbia. 4 months down the line, Shaqiri was abused by travelling Red Star Belgrade fans when they met Liverpool at Anfield in the Champions League. And in order to try and ease tension, Jurgen Klopp left him at home for the return game. Forward, Bakary Xhaka. Arriving in Germany as a refugee from the Gambia in 2015, Bakary Xhaka joined Hamburg just a year later at the age of 18 and is now one of the club's key men, playing across the forward line this season. But in the summer of 2019, the attacking midfielder became embroiled in a media storm after Sport Bild ran an article questioning the identity of Xhaka. In it, they speculated that he may have changed his name when he fled to Germany 4 years earlier and was actually 2 years older than he claimed to be. This led the German FA to run an investigation into Xhaka, with rival clubs also getting involved, contesting games which they had lost to Hamburg with him in the side. This was also a big worry for Xhaka, who would have likely lost his refugee status had he been found to be older than he was. But within a month the investigation was dropped, after Xhaka's lawyer obtained his birth certificate proving his identity, allowing him to help his side vie for promotion back to the Bundesliga. Forward, Nadia Nadim. Nadia Nadim grew up in Afghanistan, a country known for its hostility to girls participating in football. In fact, their national women's team wasn't even formed until 2007. Nevertheless, she was taught how to play the sport by her father at home, sparking her love for the beautiful game. But tragically, he was killed by the Taliban when Nadine was just 12, and she and her family subsequently fled to Denmark. She quickly made it her ambition to play football professionally after joining a team near her refugee camp, and 7 years later she was selected to play for the Danish national team after she successfully applied for citizenship. Now 32, Nadim has amassed nearly 100 caps with 33 international goals to her name, and was an integral part of the side which made the final of the 2017 Euros. Meanwhile, her club career has taken her to the US, where she won the National Women's Soccer League in 2016, and also to Manchester City and PSG, where she has 8 goals and 10 assists so far this season, as Les Parisiennes fight European champions Lyon for their first ever title. A true icon of the women's game. Forward, Pione Sisto. Another Danish international, Pione Sisto broke into his country's set-up in 2015 following impressive displays for FC Midtjylland, becoming one of the few black players to represent Denmark. Arriving in Europe when he was just 2 months old, Sisto was born in Uganda to South Sudanese parents, who had fled civil war in the mid-90s. One of 9 children, the forward was instilled with a strong work ethic from a young age, and this fed into his success in developing as a footballer. Moving to Midtjylland at 18, Sisto was known to put in double the hours of his teammates on the training pitch, and this kind of dedication led him to becoming one of the side's key players, scoring twice against Man United in the Europa League, and subsequently earning himself a move to Celta Vigo in 2016. His good form in Galicia saw him picked for the 2018 World Cup, where he helped the national side to a last 16 finish, losing out on penalties to eventual finalist Croatia. He has struggled to make the squad since and has also seen his game time reduced in La Liga, but at 25, Pione Sisto has plenty of time to regain his best form. So we hope you enjoyed that 11. I know a little bit different this time, but some fascinating stories in there. Let us know if you've got any ideas for any more left field 11s in the comments below. Why not click on the video on screen right now? I'm sure it's an absolute belter. And of course, don't forget to like and subscribe to Football Daily so you never miss out on any more great content. See you next time.